Thank you for tuning in to the Black and Gold Hockey Podcast. Please subscribe to our weekly Boston Bruins hockey talk on listening platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Stitcher Radio, and Spotify Podcasts. We'd certainly appreciate it if you give our show a 5-star rating along with a written review. You can also subscribe to our official YouTube channel for a video version of our weekly program. If you'd like to support our show financially, please go to our blackandgoldhockey.com website and click on our affiliated Fanatics banner before shopping online. Another way to financially support our weekly program is to become a Patreon member to be eligible for weekly Boston hockey prizes and monthly Boston Bruins hand-signed jersey giveaways. Please go to patreon.com/blackandgoldhockeypodcast and donate just $1 per episode. Many thanks for the continued support and enjoy the show.
Behind that, the Sanderson door! On the door! Door from the Boston Bruins!
30 seconds left in the period. The Bruins are shorthanded. Ray Bourque.
Ray Bourque from the face-off circle to the right of Reggie Whitman. Fired it down and Whitmore threw it. Did he ever? To Berger on the drive, save, rebound, he's loose, Sagan kicks him loose, Berger on, scores! The Bruins goes on, with the point of the dagger in their throats, they rip it out of Toronto's hands, and kill the beast! The Boston Bruins have won it, after being 3 down in the third!
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Black and Gold Hockey Podcast. This episode 338 of the Black and Gold Hockey Podcast is brought to you by FanDuel, the exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network. Right now you can sign up at fanduel.com/Boston because right now new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. If you'd like to interact with our show as well and our hosts and our future guests, give us a call and leave a brief voicemail on our BNG listener hotline at 978-504-2727. You can also send us your questions on Twitter by using the hashtag AskBNG. And we also ask that you subscribe to our official Black and Gold Hockey Podcast YouTube channel for more Boston Bruins news on the NHL level all the way down to the prospects that are worldwide. Please hit that the subscribe tab and the notification bell so you can get notified as soon as we upload new Bruins-related content. Now, I'm going to kick it over to my co-host, Mr. Mark Allred, joining us again after having to take a week off. Hopefully you're feeling better this weekend, my friend.
Oh, so much better. So much better. I think having a whole week off and just relaxing and maybe overdoing it a little bit on the partying at my age finally caught up with me on Friday and Saturday last week, where I was like physically sick and worn out that I just couldn't get a pod out. So apologies to everybody, all our listeners, for the inconvenience, and to obviously you guys for the 11th hour notice. But yeah, I'm much better. We got a boatload of things to talk about, and we do have a guest, as the YouTube viewers now can see. It's Jay Pike, my friend. He runs and operates the Baked Bear Hockey Podcast on the Black and Gold Productions Sports Media Company's podcast network. So, Jay, welcome back to the program, my friend. I can now say you are a friend of the show with 2 appearances.
Hey, and I've never been called that before. That's great. Called a lot of things, but never that. So, yeah, happy that I could hop on. Happy to get the chance to do it.
Absolutely. We appreciate you coming in for covering up for Grace. Grace Roberts, who we can't get in touch with when we were recording, so we reached out to our network, and thankfully you had time to join us. So truly appreciate the opportunity to talk to you again, my friend.
Cheers. Let's do it.
We actually have some news from the week. Mark, I'm not sure where you want to get started, but I know last recording we were talking about Marc McLaughlin hadn't signed yet. This past week they signed him. I'm pretty sure I nailed that one on the head. 1 year, 2-way deal.
Absolutely. Like he would throw darts, my man.
but I'm not that good at darts. What are
am
your thoughts on the deal? It looks like he'll make about $100K in the AHL if that's where he ends up, but it's a two-way deal worth $775K at the NHL level. So far, no news on Bergeron, so Marc McLaughlin is a center. What's your read into this, guys?
I think it's another depth signing, but a smart one. Marc McLaughlin has not quite yet. I think he's, per our good friend Dom Tiano, I believe his 56 games away, NHL games, that means, for him to be waiver exempt. So basically, he will be in the NHL, vying for a roster spot this fall. Because Don Sweeney did say many times in these last, end of year press conferences that the lineup could be a little bit of youth implemented, moving forward. So Mark is going to have that opportunity to secure a spot. The smart thing about it is because he doesn't have all those games, that if he doesn't make a roster spot, he can go to the AHL and be an asset down there, a depth piece, a break glass in case of emergency, probably the next call up if you need somebody at center or the right wing. And I think it's just another good piece. And hopefully he comes out and makes the spot, because there's a lot of veterans that recently got signed that are going to challenge younger players like Marc McLaughlin for roster spots during the upcoming camp.
Jay, what were your thoughts?
Well, I kind of full on with Mark. Like, it's a great depth signing. I don't see McLaughlin, like you're bringing up Bergeron in connection with the signing. I was like, no, that doesn't. The two things don't. They don't have anything to do with each other to me, but he's got a shot. Like, he's got to look at this team this year and think, I can make this roster. Like, if he comes into camp and he shows up and plays however he, whatever he thinks his best is, I think he's got a shot at making the roster. And I think he's not the only one, but there's, these other young guys who are, these two-way contracts. I think they see opportunities too. So I'm excited for him. I know there were people that thought he'd make the club last year, but who was he getting in above, right? So that last year, he had to look at it and go, ooh, but this year, this is a chance for him to make some noise before cap goes up too.
Yeah,
I do want to add one more thing, is the way the contract works. This also creates a little bit of a landscape for both sides of the coin here. When you're talking about Bruins management and the player, Marc McLaughlin, there might be a better opportunity for NHL consistency after this next season, where he could sign an NHL deal and stay up there as a regular member. So that might have been a negotiation tactic to keep the Mass native locally and with his favorite Boston Bruins team growing up. So I mean, this year is such a transition year when you think about this roster and all these vets that came in, the rookies or the youthful members of the system that are going to be challenging for roster spots. It's just going to be a really interesting offseason. And I'm not all the doom and gloom about these signings that were made. I think we got some players that are on great deals. We didn't go out and reach for one or two players at $3 million a piece. We got 7 to 8 players at pretty good discount. So it should be interesting how everything pans out.
And I don't think these vets, if the young guys can't come in and play better, if you're not playing better than Van Riemsdyk, then how Van Riemsdyk's a good signing, right? Like, there's these vets here on cheap deals that the young guys, if you can outplay them, do it. If not, then we have the vets that are ready to go.
Insurance policy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And if you look at kind of how he's doing it, like, you very easily could pencil in your first line of Marchand, Coyle, and Pasternak just done, and then slide Coyle down if Bergeron does come back. Like, there's options there, but then you have DeBrusk and Zacha and Van Riemsdyk. Like, so you're really just kind of throwing a bunch of shit together in the bottom 6 and saying, okay, who's gonna float? Who's gonna swim? Sink or swim? And the best 6 are going to be on this roster. The seventh guy, our Ralphie Cox is going to be our 13th forward, and the rest of you, good luck getting through waivers. If you're not waiver exempt, then you'll go to Providence.
Yeah,
I mean, they're all those kind of guys too.
Yeah.
I think a guy like AJ Greer is going to really push or get pushed You know, I don't think anybody's going to cry if he ends up going on waivers early in the year. I'd be okay with losing him on waivers if that means Oscar Steen has performed better and outperformed him. You know, if Jesper Boqvist, who was also just signed, you know, I think there's something that could be there, very, very much like Pavel Zacha when they first acquired him. You know, untapped potential in that player who could play bottom six, possibly has the talent for top six. You just don't know because he's been in such a bad turmoil situation that just let it all unfold.
What that means, too, is you've got tons of guys who are intrinsically motivated. Their motivation is coming from right deep in their chest now. So those are guys, it's going to be every night. This is my chance because if I don't do it, the guy, you know, whoever's right behind me, he's coming for me. So that's, you know, all that youth and they're all that motivated. I think it's kind of exciting, as wild as it might be.
Yeah, and the signing that Mark and I both don't like, which is the Milan Lucic signing, but he's excited to be here. I know, Mark, you put it on our agenda here, the interview that he did with, was it John Scott of Dropping the Mitts?
Yeah, Dropping the Gloves.
Dropping the Gloves. Mitts, gloves.
Dropping the Gloves with John Scott, the hockey podcast. I listen to it every week. And producer Tim is a great guy. He's been on this program before. We're going to have him back on sometime soon. We're just trying to get some times that are good for all parties. But, you know, they interviewed Milan as soon as it happened, right after free agency, just a couple of days past. And, you know, logistically, I'm not happy with the move. Because I just think that there was other options available that could have been, you know, gotten for. But there's a story to it. There's a nostalgia, and I get that. But I think in the interviews I've seen recently, I've kind of taken a step back a little bit on my frustration with the organization for making a move like this. And I'm not hating on the player. I'm not hating on his decline. I'm not hating on his point production or lack thereof. It's just, you know, it just doesn't work for me. But let me tell you, when I see these videos and you start hearing about his family, you know, and Boston, how much he loves it here, I think what really got me was, you know, anywhere I go around the world, everybody points at me and says, that guy's a Boston Bruin. But what my daughters don't know is that they've never seen me as a Boston Bruin. When everybody says that, they see me as a Calgary Flame or somebody else. It's just not Boston. That's what really got me. And he says, I want them to see me at least for 1 year what a Boston Bruin is and what it means to be a part of their family. So that's the one that really got me a little more involved with his addition, and I start thinking more about the leadership factor and so on. It's not just about the intimidation factor, because that is something he's going to provide. This is something that we just didn't have last season. We thought we were going to get it with Hathaway and the addition of Orlov, who I know is not all that physical, but we also got it with Patuzzi as well. But, you know, I think this is going to move the needle that much more in the upcoming year, because nobody's really going to take liberties with that guy on the bench.
Yeah, and I'm changing slightly my opinion on it, but Jay, I want to know where you landed on it first, because I haven't had a chance to hear your thoughts on it. So before I dive into how mine's evolving, I'm curious your thoughts when that first came out.
Mine has been almost somewhat steady, but I said I was like, I don't want us to sign him. Like, it just doesn't. We've got too many of these young guys that can do that role that are just a lot faster. Like, the speed issue for me wasn't going away. But I understood the draw of fans. Like, you know, if I was a 16-year-old fan, I bet I'd be all over it, right? But once they signed him, and I got caught up in it too, and I'm like, all right, this is super fun. This is more of a business decision than it is a hockey decision, because you put him on the team, I don't believe it's a better roster than with him not on it. And that's going to be a hard sell for me. But he has a role he can play. He'll be a huge energy guy at home. Oh, the crowd is dead. We're down 2-1. Who do you put out on the ice? Luch, and you hope that he can hit somebody. Like, there's a place for him. It's just it was hard to tell. So I'm just kind of, you know what, $1 million for 1 year. It's the centennial season. He's going to look so good in all of this throwback gear. Just to hell with it. It's fine, right? He's not literally useless.
Yeah, right. He's not a road cone. So when Mark and I were first talking about when this was coming out, I was very much against it for all those reasons that you said. He's just slower. I don't want him to block the young kids from coming up. And Mark, and I'm glad you put that interview on my radar, because one of the biggest things that it caught from me was his self-awareness. He knows that he's not what he used to be, but he knows that he can bring something, and he wants to bring it. That's the key part, is he wants to play the role that this team needs. And there were a couple things that he mentioned in the interview that stood out for me. One where he said, listen, I'm not signing to play 82 games, but if they ask me to, I'll fucking do it, and I'll be happy doing it. I'm glad to do it. But if they have me play 7, I'll play 7. Like, whatever they need from me, I'm going to do that. I know I can bring physicality, those types of things. And then they were talking to him about his time last year in Calgary. And this is the part where my ears perked up, where he said no one really grabbed kind of everything that was going on, the bull by the horns, and said, let's figure this out. And so when you have so much youth on this team, and no, I'm not saying he's going to take the C from anybody in particular or anything like that, but when you have ideally Bergeron back in that room, but Marchand in that room, Coyle in that room, I would even say to some degree Jake DeBrusk, Pavel Zacha in that room, McAvoy, just adding Milan Lucic to be able to sit there and go, okay, this is where we were last year. I've been in this situation. One of us has to step up and do this, and I can do it if need be, because I'm the Swiss Army knife of off the ice stuff. But just the fact that he is self-aware to know all these different things, he brings something in the room, and like you said, for $1 million, there's something there. It is what it is. Okay, fine.
Hey,
Sorry, go ahead, Mark.
Shout out to Craig Conroy, the new GM of the Calgary Flames, for giving Milan the opportunity to have himself and the agent talk before July 1st. There was permission given, and as soon as that permission was given, Milan even said that the attraction for him as a player and what he brings was attracted to 10 to 16 teams in the league, or 15 teams.
Wanted this guy.
Exactly. And one of those phone calls was the Vancouver Canucks, but there was nothing even there. It was just a cordial call, but I was actually shocked about that. But it's because of the AAV went down so much. He is now a very attractive member, which when he was making $6 million for the past 5 years in Calgary, that was not an attractive player to trade for. I mean, Bruins fans were going balls deep, if I can say that, on you got to trade for this guy, but completely neglecting the idea of that awful AAV that just would not work in Boston.
Yeah, I think I like what Chris said about that. Even in the locker room, if you think about when we added Bertuzzi, Orlov, Hathaway last year, did any of them bring something new to the room? I don't. Right? Like none of. But Luch, yeah, he's a bit of a unicorn right now, and whatever he brings is different than as great as the leadership of everyone Chris listed off. All of them are. This is a voice that might have a different thing to say, and you never know what. It may not be on the ice that Luch's full impact is felt.
And just the desire, the want, where he just the passion that he had in this interview for the city, for the team, for the organization, to sit there and go, he gave money up to come here. And the fact that half of the league was in on him makes me sit there and go, okay, maybe again, there's legitimately something there. I don't want him to block the youth. So if he ends up taking the role of the 13th forward, but what this interview told me is he's okay with that. Mm-hmm. So fine, for $1 million, what this guy can bring you, he's won a Stanley Cup, but he can also put the pressure on the young guys and say, listen, just because you get there doesn't mean you're ever going to get there again. This is a guy who hasn't been close since 2011. Not even sniffed close. Closest he got was first round. So, he can help with, if someone's drive is the cup, this is what you have to do to keep yourself there. Guys like Bergeron, Marchand, they can do it too, but he now has outside of organization perspective that they don't have. And just to say, this is how we did it in LA, or this is how we did it in Calgary, just a little bit, that drop of something new might spark something. Maybe it doesn't, but for $1 million, it's chump change.
In my opinion, he's got an ingrained philosophy. I think once you've been to Boston Bruins for 8 years, you kind of get that culture. Yeah, that never leaves you. That goes on to other teams where it's spread and says, that's not how we worked in Boston and so on, They're telltales about this culture in Boston. So I think it's an ingrained thing that he just has and he missed. Obviously, you could definitely see in the interview that he says he is so pumped to be back in Boston. And I do want to mention one more thing. We're happy. We're all happy. We're cordially happy with Lucic coming back. But please, enough with the friggin' social. The social media. I love the Bruins social media and everything, but wow, are they hyping this up just a little too much? This isn't Bobby Orr coming back with a brand new set of knees. Come on.
Oh, here's Luch, and he's at this restaurant. Here's Luch over here in this store. Oh, here's Luch going to the bathroom. Oh, here it was just every 5 minutes you get something new. It was.
Did you guys see the freaking GIF that Petrov McGuire shared? It was two guards at a jail that busted into a cell to wake some poor defenseless kid that was in there for something, and he was just they smack him around, they're waking him up, they're trying to get him out, and they were like, Petrov was like, this is the Bruins social media getting Milan Lucic ready for another interview.
Yeah, no, that cracked me up.
Oh, that's good. I haven't seen it, but that sounds awesome.
You gotta look. Go on Petrov McGuire on Twitter and go look at his timeline. It's freaking hilarious.
Can I ask you guys a question? I don't like comps that much, especially fans love making comps to 2011. But one popped into my head when you were talking about Luch and his understanding his role, and you want me to play 7 games, you want me to play 82. This is what I can do if no one else can do it. I'm thinking of Sean Thornton. Is there a Sean Thornton role for Luch where no game is kind of guaranteed for him, but anytime he comes back after some time off, he's going to give you this power for 2 or 3 games? And then is that the kind of, is that feasible? Is that actually a legit thing that could happen?
I think it's more of a mesh of, and one of the names is going to set people off, I know, but Sean Thornton mixed with kind of like a Mark Recchi. If that makes sense. The leadership style of what Recchi brought, the whole jacket thing that year, that's something that Lucic is now, from outside the organization, he's able to bring that drop of something to, but he's going to play more of a Sean Thornton role. He's not the top 6 guy. You know what I mean? I think it's more of those kind of guys in a blender. If that
makes sense. Recchi in the locker room, Thornton on the ice kind of thing.
Exactly.
Honestly, if that's what we get, I don't think anybody's going to be complaining about it. But
I'd say for $1 million, I'll take it.
Yeah.
And go ahead, Mark.
I like the spot starts that he's probably going to get. It maybe not get 82, but put him in 70 of the most important games. Like, you definitely put him in against the freaking Florida Panthers. You definitely put him in against Montreal, Toronto, and so on. Especially Toronto. The Adams division. Jesus, yes. I'm so old. Yes.
Love it.
The Atlantic division is going to be structurally pretty good this year. Not only in talent, but toughness. I think every team in the Atlantic has bulked up a little bit. With Lucic coming back to Boston and Reeves going to Toronto and, somebody up in Ottawa, and it's just going to be a crazy town with physicality. So you could definitely see that everybody in the division has definitely stepped up their game in that particular area.
Oh, yeah. No, the Atlantic is going to be it's going to be tough. It's going to be brutal, and I think a guy like Lucic can help them through the division because, everybody's got somebody. Florida's got Tkachuk. Ottawa's kind of the one that I sit there and I go, I'm not quite sure who their big guy is, but I'm sure they have at least one. Actually, no, they have Tkachuk as well. They have the other Tkachuk.
They have the other Tkachuk. Yeah.
They do, yes.
That's what I was thinking. Tampa Bay is always going to be Tampa Bay. They're big-bodied Kucherov guys, that type of thing. Toronto just added Reeves. They're probably penciling him in for a suspension every other week at this point. So, they're not going to worry about what he brings on the ice. He doesn't have to bring anything on the ice other than hit people. They have goal scorers. They're going to be fine on offense even without him. And then, even Detroit, like a guy like Perron and Kopp, they throw their body around. Buffalo, Tage Thompson's 6'5". You got to be able to bang him off the ice, off the puck, get him off the puck. Like, he's a big boy, and Montreal, Jack Eye on defense. All of their defensemen are like 6-something, so you got to have to be able to toss them around, like, and then the Metro, even the Metro, Carolina, they're gonna bang you around, and especially with a guy like Orlov now on the back end. The Devils, they showed to be pretty chippy last year. Same thing with the Rangers. Like, they're all, and God forbid, Philly. They're bulking up.
Yeah. In addition to Hathaway as well.
My question to you, Mark, knowing that you heard the pod, I don't know if Jay, if you heard the interview at all, but based on his excitement, I also sit here and I say this is one of those things where I could see Milan, when his playing days are over, come back and join the organization in a player development role.
Yeah, much like on what Adam McQuaid's doing right now. Adam McQuaid was an absolute freaking beast on the ice. When that wasn't my favorite defenseman, but it's that physicality that you just cannot get away from. It's part of the game, and it's something that's been starting to get ingrained in my head from a lot of people that I talk to, that I used to buck the trend. I used to be the guy that says the team with the most goals wins the games. But there's also intangibles that before that final buzzer goes off that happen that I keep forgetting about. And I'm getting more and more involved in knowing that you need to play a physical game, because when that transition into the postseason happens, the season changes. It's almost like the Hulk. We go from one skinny white dude to a big old green guy all of a sudden, and that's playoff hockey. And you have to be able to sustain that particular part of the game if you're going to survive.
Yeah, it feels to me like there's a bit of a shift back. Like it felt like there was this whole hockey's going to speed now, speed and skill. But then, like you look at all the signings now, everyone is bulking up. It's kind of like everything is cyclical in these games, and I think we're headed back towards a little more of a heavy hitting game, because these guys are getting tired of being skated around. And what happens is the guys who you could skate around, well, they start fading off, and the new defensemen that are coming up are faster, they're bigger. So now, yeah, that's great that you can deke, but guess what, kid? I can catch you now. Like, I'm not one of the old guys who couldn't keep up with you. And
Emotion creates emotion.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be very interesting too. And if you've noticed, one thing that Boston has done this year is they've signed no one shorter than 6 feet.
Yeah, I saw that.
No one,
and they drafted nobody under 6 feet.
Yeah, I think they didn't draft anybody under 6'3" or something like that.
Right.
It's like, I mean, and it's not to say that you can't be short and compete and stuff, but you really have to be selective of who you give that money to. Like Jonathan Marchessault, he just went out and he won the Conn Smythe. That's a guy that you pay money to, even though he's not 6 feet tall. But he also plays bigger than what I think he's like 5'10" listed or something like that. He plays bigger than that. You got
to have a balance. You definitely have to have a balance when you're playing with shorter guys. Like, you can't have a whole defense crew of Matt Grzelcyks out there, because you get ruined every night.
Right. Your defensive core cannot be based off of Matt Grzelcyk, Jack Ashawn, and Torrey Krug. We have learned
True that. Yep.
But at the same time, you got to be like the Forbort Grizz thing was almost this little microcosm of that issue, right? Like there were very few of us who didn't think Grizz should be the one in there. It's got nothing to do with size. He can do this thing we need, which is just getting the fucking puck out of our end. Forbort couldn't do that, so there's the trade-offs, and that's the one thing you worry about, but you hope Monty may have learned to listen there. But Forbort's still on the roster, and a lot of us didn't think he'd be at this point, so
I think he stays on the roster. I do. Mark, what are your thoughts on that?
It's interesting because, there's a conversation on Twitter today between Dom Tiano and so on, and a few other people, including myself. And unfortunately, it does seem like the Boston Bruins just can't get rid of the guy, or they don't want to get rid of the guy. They believe in the depth and keeping him around because the window for them to buy him out has now come and gone. I mean, the guy makes $3 million a year. The next window of a buyout eligibility is for players that make $4 million and more. So that just tells me that they're trying to get him involved. I'm not sure if this guy's got any trade value. He might for a 7th round pick if you want to get another one next year. I don't know. With everything that came in, the Shattenkirks and all this, and what could be coming up from Providence in the system, this training camp, I honestly don't see a fit for him here. But I also just don't see other teams like banging down the door saying, can we get this guy that's making $3 million AAV? And also, I do want to touch on real quick, if you don't mind, that Dom Tiano also said that if Forbort doesn't make camp and he passes through waivers and they do bury him in Providence, that half of his salary will be cut off. So they get a savings of $1.6 million.
Is there any penalty the next year for anything like that?
I don't believe that there's a penalty for that. But what happens is your NHL player that you buried down in Providence is making NHL money.
Right.
So he's still making the cap, but it doesn't go against your cap, which I see the way I'm looking at Forbort. I think this is how they look at him. He's insurance. Because right now, you pretty much know your starting 3 on the right side. McAvoy, Carlos, Shattenkirk. Barring any injury, no one's really getting thrown out of that side. The left side, though, you're probably going to keep your Lindholm-Carlo pair the same. Beyond that, you have 2 openings. And right now, I think you're looking at Grzelcyk McAvoy again for the majority of the season. I think that's something that after what Monty went through last year in the playoffs, he's going to look at a lot heavier to say, is this a pairing I can keep together in the playoffs? Can Grzelcyk do it? Can I rely on him? And I think that's going to be a huge thing for Grzelcyk this year. But beyond that, now you're looking at Lohrei, Zboril, Forbort, and a few other RFAs. So I think they're looking at Forbort as if Zboril can't, and we don't want Lohrei to, we have Forbort there. And he's, even as a 7th defenseman, maybe he's not in the top 6 every night, but we can rotate him in, which they proved last year. They have no issues rotating defensemen on a nightly basis, especially on the bottom pair. A guy like Ian Mitchell or, some of the other RFAs that they brought in this year, who I think they're still waiting on signing some of them. So I'm not quite sure what's going on with them. But, you throw that into a blender, just like you're doing with your bottom 6, see what sticks. But Forbort, you know what he is. You don't have to test him. You don't have to, try him here, try him there. It's just a matter of, okay, he's going to be our 7th defenseman, barring Zboril not taking the reins and running with it. I mean, for all we know, we could look at Shattenkirk and Grzelcyk as a bottom pair because Zboril takes off on top 4 minutes again. He was looking great before he got hurt, and he's been looking good since at the World Championships, as Dom has pointed out a couple times. So, I mean, I really want to see what Zboril has, but I think they're looking at Forbort going, if we get rid of him now, if we bottom out, where's our insurance?
Yeah, that was kind of exactly what I was thinking. Like, especially now knowing that if they don't have him on the team to start the season, that they can put him in Providence. I know, I'm sure he'll be as happy as Riley was, but it's like I was always thinking, oh, you got to cut him, and then or he's got to trade him, But it's like, well, if all you can get is future considerations, let's hold on to him because if Lohrei steps up, and is ready for the NHL. Okay, Saboro. Like, there's guys that if they show they're ready and you feel like there's very little doubt around it, it's like, this is an NHL hockey player. You can just, that's where, okay, you know what, future considerations, forward, you're gone to, well, let's Arizona, let's just say that, because it's them 9 times out of 10. And, you know, you had your insurance, but now you feel good, so you're able to move on.
I think Mark's point, too, that you brought up from Dom, adds to that insurance thing, too, because let's say you come out of camp and you've got Grzelcyk, Lindholm, Zboril, Lohrei on your left side. You now put you put Forbort on waivers. One of two things happens. Another team claims him, in which case they take him and his $3 million off your books, and they're stuck with him. They can't put him through waivers without him going back to you.
30,
Second of all,
is it 30 days and 10 games?
30. If he clears, he would be able to go down to Providence, like you said, bury some of his cap hit, bury some of his
but if
money.
if he's claimed from another team, that team has to keep him for 30 days or an equivalent of 10 NHL games
something like
before they can put him down to their minor pro affiliate.
But I think you get first claim of him back. If they waive him, you get first claim because they claimed him from you.
Right. I'm not totally sure about
Something
that.
like that. We'll clarify with Dom exactly what that. But my point being is your worst case scenario is someone takes him off your hands for free. They claim him. Okay. I mean, we were hoping for future considerations, but that's kind of the same thing. Let's be honest.
Kind of,
100%.
kick the can down the freaking road.
At that point, you know what I mean? Like, it's fine. Or you bury him down in Providence. You have him there. He is last year's Mike Riley right now. I feel like he would have a little bit better of an attitude about it, but at the same time, it's a little easier to have that attitude if you're getting all $3 million of your dollars.
Sure.
I'll play Providence for $3 million.
Exactly.
Like, let's go.
Let's go, right? I think all of us would. So I think he's an insurance policy for him, and at the end of the day, they have other ways. But I'm also not sure how the modified no trade clause kicks in on waivers. I'm pretty sure the waivers process, though, is only part of no movement clauses, not no trade clauses.
Right.
So
That's absolutely correct.
did you have a particular direction you wanted to go from here, Mark?
No, you have the agenda, my friend, so do with it accordingly.
Alrighty. Well, the reason why I ask is because part of this is the fact that Jeremy Swayman, Trent Frederic still remain unsigned. And obviously this year we saw the news of Tanner Jeannot getting his 2-year deal, $2.6 million AAV with Tampa Bay after they gave up 5 draft picks to get this guy. A lot of people are using him as a comp for Frederic. I still think Frederic's better than him or has more potential, but I think his dollar amount's going to be a little bit higher. What do you guys think?
I don't know if that dollar amount's going to be that much higher. And is that a tactic on Trent Frederic's part and his agent? Possibly. Dom Tiano mentioned that as well on Twitter a little while ago or yesterday. But I like the term and the money for Trent, and I think that still leaves the Boston Bruins enough room at $2.6 to $3 million to get Jeremy Swayman done for at least a year or two, kind of bridge deal coming out of his entry level deal. So there's money to be had, but it's just that who's going to get it when it comes down to the final bell? Because believe it or not, if you look at statistics and so on, when a case goes to arbitration, the arbiter generally goes for the player. So the Boston Bruins, they need to be prepared for that. And obviously people know that we've heard so many podcasts, so many articles that these arbitration hearings can get nasty. They're pretty much talking bad shit about you on a regular to try to drive your value down while you're on the other side of that table negotiating a higher value for the stuff that you did positive during your tenure here in the organization and what you could provide further. But I don't know. I mean, if it comes down to the number, that they want. Like if Swayman and Frederic both go to the full length and they get what they want, I think the Bruins are going to have to make another move just to facilitate those deals in coming in and freeing up a little more money to even bring back a player like Patrice Bergeron, who I'd like to talk about sooner or later.
Oh, we'll get to him.
Okay.
I agree with that fully. Like it's if Swayman and Freddie get, do we know what they're asking for? Like that's not something that's out there. Like they're looking for this and the Bruins are looking for this kind of thing. We're just working under comps.
So Jay, right now there's a really good website that I like for comparables, and it's a little more favorable than some other ones that I've had. But it's AFP Analytics, and they do a great job. And I can send you the link sometime today if you want to check it out. But it gives you a really good idea of what they're looking for. And they have Jeremy Swayman in the 3.5 to 4 million range. And I thought that could be a realistic thing, but it took me back a little bit thinking that the culture here and how many years Don Sweeney has talked to players and say, hey, we're up against it. We want to make it work. We want to bring you and Linus back for another year of Jennings winning success. But you got to work with the constraints that I have right now when we're trying to bring in the captain of the team back, the next Hall of Famer. All those are going to play certain tactics in these negotiations. So it's going to be interesting on how it all works out. Now, are any of these guys going to sign before, like Ian Mitchell did, pretty much the day after he accepted his qualifying offer? I'm not sure. Hopefully it does happen, because if it does happen early, that means that they want to work together and get something done to be cap compliant and ready to go by the upcoming season.
Yeah. Okay. So those the numbers kind of make, because if Jeremy gets somewhere around 4, like he is probably looking for, I'm assuming Swayman's looking at 4+, and then if Freddie comes in, he's probably trying to get somewhere around 3. Right now, I believe Freddie's is going to come down. I feel like that'll be the one where the savings is. It'll be just going off the players' personalities, the way they talk. Even ending the season, Swayman was immediately, oh, my agent's going to deal with that. He really didn't give any sort of, oh, yeah, we're going to find, I felt like he really, the money clearly is a thing, or it's as much the playing time. He just doesn't want to play 40 games next year. Right. There might be a real thing there. So my hope is that we can save on Freddie to afford Swayman. I'd love to just give him 2 years, like the DeBrusque thing, and see where you can go from there. But
and not to regurgitate what so many other podcasts out there are talking right now when it comes to Trent Frederic, but like Cam and Strick podcast, which is a really good program, they do upwards of 2 or 3 hour programs every week, which is fantastic. But they're heavily beating the drum of St. Louis making a trade for Trent Frederic if things get a little nasty in the contract negotiations leading up to arbitration on the 30th. Is it the third?
Swayman's the 31st, I think.
Yeah, I have an image right here that I'll share with you guys from Ty Anderson a while back.
Oh yeah, right here. Yep.
Yeah. So it was
Ian Mitchell, we can obviously cross off. The other thing, too, though, that I look at with this is July 30th and August 1st. They're 2 weeks away. These guys are on vacation right now. Let's be real. They finished the season. They had a bunch of, locker room cleanouts, this, that, the other thing. Get home, see the family. Let's go on vacation now. And so I'm not worried that it's not done yet. I would be worried come July 28th if it's not done, because that means it's probably going to arbitration. But they have up until that day to do it anyway. Yeah. And quite frankly, I think this Tanner Jeannot deal does help the team side of things, just because, at this point you go, listen, Jeannot got 2.6 for 2. Let's meet somewhere in the middle. Let's say 2.95. We can structure it so that you get some signing bonuses, so you get cash up front. We can structure it in a way that's favorable to you. But if we can get the cap hit to 2.95 AAV, that works for us. The cash can work for you. And we can do this again in 2 years. We can come back. We can address it when we have more cap space. I think the Swayman one is a lot more tough because he's playing like secondary starter money. or he like a secondary starter. He is. You only have your other guy, Allmark, for 2 more seasons. Yes, he just won the Vezina, so that helped in your negotiation. But he also can sit there and go, well, we won the Jennings because I played so well. If I didn't play well, then you'd have to rely on Linus that much more and all those things. So, I know on paper his comp is Jake Ottinger mostly, but it's also a very, very different landscape from when Jake Ottinger went up against his RFA status. So for them to go 4x4, it'd be nice. And yeah, sure, if we can lock him in for 4 years at $4 million, I'm happy to do it. But clearly that's not where either side is at right now. I think you're going to have to give him a little bit more, maybe on a 1-year deal, and structure it. Well, if it's 2 years, then again, same thing. Structure it in a different way. I don't care how they structure it. I'm worried about the AAV. I want to be clear about that. I don't care how they fucking structure the contract. The player can get all the money up front for all I care. I worry about how it's going to affect their cap situation.
If I'm worried about anything on cap, it's paying 2 goaltenders $9 million with a minimal cap increase. Now, next season after this upcoming, when it's potentially, I'm got the air quotes out there.
Oh yeah, potentially
$4.5 million jump. We have that flexibility a little bit to afford a tandem like that. But right now in the NHL, it's really unheard of to have 2 goaltenders that are locked in at close to 10 or 9 million.
That doesn't mean it's a bad thing, though. And I mean, I'm the goalie defender. I'm always gonna, always assume the goalies are right. But it's I look at, I'm like, how is this $9 million? Let's just put it at that, because that's probably around what it's going to be for a number 1 goalie for all 82 games, right? You don't have to think of it as, Allmark's going to play 82, and this isn't, Rask played 70. Did he play 75, 72 1 year?
Oh yeah,
that's nuts.
He's a workhorse.
And then he's supposed to, and then he went in anyway. I love me some Rask, but actually, oddly enough, my 2019 towel fell as I was saying that. I don't know.
Yeah, I know. I saw that. That's so weird.
I'm going to stop talking about Rask.
The ghost of Tuukka Rask.
That's how I look at it. I'm like, $9 million, and I'm guaranteed a number 1 starting caliber NHL goalie in net every single night.
Yeah.
For me, I'm like, I don't see a problem here. I know the cap constraint is the one. Okay, if we gotta, because you gotta fill out a roster, I get it. Just like the Hall thing, right? But to me, I'm looking at it, I'm going, I love this. Every night I got a number 1 guy in the net to watch, and any game is up for grabs with them, right? There's no, we got the backup tonight, right? That's not happening in Boston.
Yeah, what I'm looking for, I'm trying to find right now, I think the biggest comp for Jeremy Swayman is going to end up being Philip Gustafsson up in Minnesota. They played roughly the same amount of games. Their numbers were, I don't want to say fairly similar. So Swayman got 24 wins to his 22, 6 losses to his 9, 2.27 goals against to 2.1, and a 920 save percentage to his 931. So very, very comparable. Gustafsson's 25, Swayman's 24. They're both RFAs, and they both are at roughly the same performance level. Whose arbitration comes first? That's what I'm trying to find out. Because if Gustafsson's arbitration comes before Swayman's, we can just look at that and go, that's going to be his contract.
Right.
Question is when?
Who is Minnesota's Ty Anderson?
I don't know. We'll
find them on Twitter.
We will find them on Twitter. I will find answers to this, I promise. Just not right now on the show. But that's what I'm circling. I want to see where that comes in.
Yeah.
And is it a little different because we have a starter? We have Linus Ullmark. Minnesota doesn't right now. They're leaning on Marc-Andre Fleury as the number 1 without him. That's a much different situation.
Is that something the arbitrators consider, though?
I don't know.
Would that have any, that doesn't seem like an argument that the team can make. Is it, look, we can't pay out, we have nobody else, and then the player would be like, yeah, you have nobody else, so I'm going to take my money now. The arbitrator, that doesn't seem to me like something that would play into it. the other decisions by the team have no effect on how much I think this guy should be making.
I think it has more effect on the pre-arbitration negotiations. Because as an agent, I would be able to look at you and be like, yeah, and if we go to arbitration, we're going to get our number or closer to our number, which is further from where you want to be, but we also have the hammer of you have nobody else.
Yeah.
You put yourself in this position, now you have to follow through on it. Otherwise, as an agent, I can sit there and go, this team puts themselves in a corner and then they don't follow through on what they say they're going to do.
Yeah.
Pretty bad sales pitch for an agent to try and sign clients to your team. So,
That's
Let's
funny.
see. I'm just looking over the agenda here because I know we had Allmark mentioned on here as well. Real quick, because we're going to hear from our friends over at FanDuel in a moment. Do you guys see them being able to perform on par, assuming they're both here, similar to last year? Obviously, not quite the historic run that Allmark was on, but do you guys see that as a very feasible thing they could do again?
Why not? Vezina, whatever you want to call it, trophy-winning Allmark and the tandem got together and won a Jennings last year. I think that, and they're best friends. You know what I mean? We've seen how much they care for each other, how much they speak well about each other, pumping the tires, as Roberto Luongo would say. But I think that they could possibly do the same thing. But moving forward, I don't know. I want the right people to make the right decisions moving forward into this next season. Like, if Allmark is injured, let's not push the button. We have another number one right behind you. It's not like we're bringing up some goalie from a throwaway league in Rochester. This is another 1A situation. Have faith in that, and I know how players are. They wear their sleeves on the heart. They're very passionate. They want to be a part of every moment that this team does. But sometimes when you have a minor injury, especially as a goaltender, where you're limited, sometimes moving laterally and so on, and what you do in the crease on a day-to-day basis, and something's hindering you and you're not getting it done, you need to, stomp that red button, all halt, and make your decision on something that is reliable. And Jeremy Swayman should have been more of an option towards the end of the year and in the playoffs.
Yeah, I fully agree. Like, I don't see any reason they can't be just as good. Last season isn't happening again, right? They're not going to have 65 wins, but their numbers, as great as they were, are still within range. And people think, they, passed ahead 60 goals and the Bruins were the greatest team ever. The goalies didn't do much. The number of games where Allmark kept us in a game for the first 20, 30 minutes, and then we would kind of step on the gas and win 3-1, win 4-2. People forget that. There were a number of games where that was going on, I think especially early in the year. He wasn't a product of that team. I think Allmark and Swayman are this good. So, of course, they can do it again. I think the two of them, 2 years from now, those two guys are both going to be making a lot of money. Because I think there's no reason, I don't have any reason to think they're going downhill. And just to finish on that, Mark, sorry. And in the playoffs, Monty, if you're doing a rotation all year, do it in the fucking playoffs. Just do it, right? I think that really became the mistake to me. Game 4 was sitting there to put Swayman in, and Game 5 was sitting there and kind of go to the rotation a little bit, just like the regular season. So to me, if it's 41 games, the playoffs has to be the same way.
Yeah, be a trendsetter. Let's try something different.
Yeah.
I think they could actually see somewhat similar success, but probably on the opposite hands. Because let's not forget how slow Swayman started last year. He came out and he was not playing well. He was giving up a goal on the first shot of the game a number of times, falling from behind. And yet he still managed to work his way into top 4 numbers across the league.
Yeah,
so,
because Because he was an emotional wreck. The guy broke up with his longtime girlfriend before the season started, or during the off season, and it was taking a little bit of a toll on him. But he's the type of player that has so many great folks around him, a really good supporting cast to get him back on track. Not only his teammates for encouragement and so on, but I mean the guy hires a sports psychologist, whatever. So, he's as part of his team. So he's probably really aggressively talking to him or her. And by, December, he was already back into, I'm ready to freaking rock and roll. And he did that. He went from December right to the end of the season and played very well. Probably one of the better goaltenders in that stretch.
That's my whole point. Imagine if he didn't have those 2 months where he started off slow. He would have had numbers, much closer to Linus's at the end of the season. And so, now, like I said, I could see them kind of flipping where they're both hovering that 1.98 goals against, that 2.01 type of range for the duration of the season. You still have most of your defense back from last year, which was very, very successful, I might add. So, yeah, you made some changes up front, but they've proved they can make the stops. They can make the ones that keep you in games. It's just a matter of how many extra chances are you going to give up because of what's going on in the offensive zone. Can they keep you in it? But they've proven they can. So there's no doubt in my mind they can replicate roughly the same percentage goals against success. Obviously the wins and the losses are going to vary. To your point, Jay, they're just not going to be a 65 win team again. But the goaltending is fine, and I'm okay with spending on it, especially if I have a mess up front. But I think it's time for us to hear from our friends over at FanDuel real quick. Unless you guys have any final thoughts.
Nope.
Alrighty. Baseball season is in full swing, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Just go to FanDuel.com/Boston. Join today. Lots of baseball to bet on. I know the Red Sox are always fun to bet against, so I'll be looking to make some money on that. I'm sure, Mark, you're laughing. You probably will be too. And also some golf. I know there's a lot of golf that you like to bet on. But fans, don't miss your chance to snag a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Again, it's just go to FanDuel.com/Boston to sign up. FanDuel is the official partner of Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball trademarks are used with permission, and you must be 21 plus and present in Massachusetts. First online real money wager only. $10 deposit is required. Refund issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 14 days. Restrictions apply. See terms at FanDuel.com/sportsbook. Hope is here. Gambling helpline ma.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support. Play it smart from the start. GameSenseMA.com or call 1-800-GAM1234.
Hey, I do want to mention after this ad read from the amazing FanDuel company that we are no longer doing advertising work with Action Electronics. So I do want to shout out Nick Tedesco and Barry over at Action Electronics for their several months of partnerships and us moving their brand and their service. Supply chain logistics. If you have any problems with supply chain, those are the guys to go to. So, unfortunately, we're not working with them anymore, but we want to thank them for their sponsorship for the last couple of months. And obviously, they said that when they have a budget, they'll circle around again and possibly work with us in the future. So, I just wanted to give them a quick shout out, and I truly appreciate their effort, communication, and willing to work with us on a regular basis.
Great partner. So unfortunately, sad to lose them, but that does also means we have openings for more. So if you and your company or know of a company, just send them our way. We're happy to reach out and see what we can do to help them as a mutual beneficial relationship. So sad to see them go, but hopefully we see them again in the future. But obviously, same feelings for former head coach Bruce Cassidy. Brings the cup back to the Massachusetts, to Cape Cod specifically. Mark, I know this was one of the first things that you put on the agenda. Thoughts? What did you want to touch on this specifically? I've done a little bit of research on the foundation, so I want to toss it over to you for that first.
No, it was. I mean, the guy earned it. You know, went out to a new team. A team that was driven for success. You know, and obviously he was on a mission to get a cup under his belt and be a member of the club, as he said. But good on him to bring it back to Massachusetts, particularly Cape Cod. Went out on the beach with his family, and I have a picture right here of the event. It is obviously Bruce Cassidy holding the cup. I'm not sure who the gentleman to his right is, but the guy in the middle is Bobby Orr, and obviously towards the cup end, that is Ray Bourque. I believe all four gentlemen are Stanley Cup champions, but I'm not sure about the guy in the blue. So congratulations to him, and obviously this was an event to kick off a foundation, which what's the foundation name again, Chris?
Cassidy Murray Foundation.
Cassidy Murray Foundation, and this was a teenager who passed away at 13, and obviously Bruce is heavily involved in it and friends with the family. So this was a kind of a really cool thing to kick off awareness on that. So congratulations to Bruce and all the people that went down to go check it out. I know a bunch of Bruins fans were down there to have the picture with the cup and Cassidy, and also well wishes and so on. But to the naysayers, it's not a kick in the dick. It's not it's nothing bad. It's just a guy that's doing a good thing for the community, and this is not the days of Ray Bourque bringing the Stanley Cup down to Central Boston, where that really was the kick in the dick back in the day.
I don't remember. See, I'm up in Halifax, so I don't remember that. That's funny. Well, I mean, obviously, no social media back then. Nowadays, it's easy to see everything that's going on, but I don't remember that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so that was was it controversial?
It was a little bit. That Ray was a little bit classless on bringing the cup back as a Colorado Avalanche freaking Stanley Cup winner.
Okay.
There was some. There were angry folks even back then. Can you believe it?
Oh man, absolutely.
And by the way, great pod on the Baked Bear. Oh man, speaking of toxic.
Right.
I'm gonna have to go and listen to that one. Mark was telling me about it.
You do. It's a real good one. His Jay's podcast is getting better and better every week. I love it.
So I don't remember Ray bringing it back in that kind of way, and I don't think that was his intent. I'm sure, just like with all of our fans, there's going to be a portion of the fan base that everything is an FU no matter what. They re-signed Bergeron. Fuck off. Come on. Yeah. There's no win. They don't want to find the win. They don't want to find the fun.
No. The worst ones for me is when the Boston Bruins do like a cancer benefit, which is awesome. They do such a great job in the community when it comes to children or even adults that have cancer and are struggling every day. And then you see in the comments, who cares? Sign Pasternak.
Exactly.
It's like, you insensitive son of bitches. You can't even have the Bruins have one great moment when you're trying to help a cause and raise money, but all you're interested in is signing David Pasternak.
I want someone to reply back, my aunt has cancer, I care. Fuck off.
Yeah.
Like insert family member, whomever. It's like, I want someone to do that just to make that person feel like total dog shit. Because I hope it does. I hope it does. But no, the Cassidy Murray Foundation, though, like you said, she passed away at 13. They just want to help bring, awareness and access to the things that families need who are in those kind of grieving times. So it's definitely a great organization, and it was a great way for him to help kick it off. I mean, it's the fucking Stanley Cup, so for a situation that can affect a lot more families, I hope that's a foundation that starts to do really, really well, because it just, unscheduled losses happen, and it sucks. And that's a foundation that really seems like they could help a lot of people. And I'm glad that, to your point, it wasn't an FU. I mean, come on, look at what he did with it. Jack Eichel brought it up to North Chelmsford, and no one cried about it. But good for him. He brought it back to where he was, and this just goes to show Bruce didn't want to leave, but he has in several interviews sat there and said, you know what, it was time. Doesn't mean I've left the city, and that's the awesome part. I don't know. I feel like something like this also makes you sit there and wonder: is there some semblance of a reunion between the two down the road after many times? I mean, Cassidy's not as old as Lou Lamoriello. Let's face it; he's not on his last team here. There's plenty of time to bring the guy back for a swan song type season kind of thing. So, but no, just a good story as well. But speaking of the coaching staff, Mark, I know you had some thoughts on this. We still have a coaching spot that's vacant right now. John Gruden went up, signed with the Toronto Marlies as their head coach. Jay, I'm curious, what were your thoughts when you saw that happen a couple weeks ago? And I know Mark wants to talk about who might be replacing him.
What are you going to do? If your team is good, you're going to lose staff. It's pro sports everywhere. You watch the team that wins the Super Bowl every year. The next year, their entire coaching staff is new because everyone has just swooped in to take all their coaches. Like the same thing is going to happen in hockey. There wasn't anywhere where Gruden couldn't move up with us. So for him, he obviously, I would assume his goal is to be an NHL coach. So he's got an opportunity to coach, and that's a high pressure area too. Anything to do with Toronto. So it's a great opportunity for him. Is it a loss for us? Probably, but it's not one. I know what you can't complain about it. It's good for him, and we hope that the next hire, is can do just as good of a job as he did. You got to trust the staff, I guess.
I've had a couple thoughts since it's been vacant for a little while. It's a tough loss for sure. I was wondering, Mark and I, we were talking about this before the show. The first name that I thought of, I was like, gee, I wonder if they're waiting so long because they're waiting to figure out what the contract details are for a guy like Jay Leach, who left the organization and is now with Seattle. But I like Mark's idea a little bit better. Mark, I'm going to have you, I don't know how much of this you can go over right now, but I know you had some thoughts on it.
I'll definitely tell you what I know, but I do want to talk about how important this process is for a guy like Jim Montgomery. Obviously, the organization as well and the players. You have to have like a good character to be part of this team and so on. You have to relate well, and they're going to they're going to vet and they're going to do their due diligence on getting somebody that's going to be, an accepted person here. Whether that be a member of Jim Montgomery's previous teams in college or Dallas or St. Louis, who knows? Those could always play big roles because there's continuity there. There's a relationship, so anything could really happen. If they're thinking internally, here's where I get my brain starts to go in a little bit of a mental pretzel. Because over a month ago, I kind of broke the news or just shared that I heard that Ryan Mouchinel, the current head coach of the Providence Bruins, his assistant Trent Whitfield, and Matt Thomas, his assistant, all got 3-year contract extensions. That news has yet to be released as of right now. Here's my theory or my thought or whatever. I kind of think that they knew that Gruden might be on his way out, that they are not breaking the news on this signing because Ryan Mouchinel might be an internal option to come up. A little bit of a relationship with Jim Montgomery. They obviously talk back and forth from Providence to Boston about players and who's coming up and what to look for and what to expect and so on. But that might be just something that's holding that news back. So obviously, if they sign somebody for Jim Montgomery as an assistant, Ryan Mouchinel will stay in Providence and so on. But if they don't and he's an option, then they have to go out and find an American Hockey League coach. And is Matt Thomas the next guy, or is Trent Whitfield, who's got 10-year in the organization, is that the next guy, or do you bring somebody else in because now you think that Jim Montgomery might be on the hot seat in a year or two? So I mean, anything could really happen. It's just all on the decision making at the top level about who's going to come in and like almost seamlessly fit like John Gruden did last year. And I got to say that I don't think it was on John Gruden to be any blame for what happened in the playoffs. I think that he and Jim Montgomery did a fantastic job by getting more out of the defense, generating more goals and shot opportunities from the back end, which is really important in the success this year. Did it translate to the postseason? Obviously not. But I don't honestly think that that's why Gruden left. I think Gruden, like Jay said, saw the landscape in Jim Montgomery and says, that guy's going to be here for a while, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to crack the NHL yet. Maybe I go to Toronto, where my family probably still lives because he was coaching in the Hamilton area a while ago in the Canadian Hockey League, Ontario Hockey League. But the path to the NHL might be a little better for him because of if a coach like, who's the Toronto Maple Leafs coach?
Sheldon Keefe.
Keefe. If he's on the hot seat, then the natural progression is to see if Gruden's the next guy. So, there's ample opportunities for players to go, and coaches to go where they want to and have success, because the landscape just seems that much better. It's almost like players as your entry level contract, and you see the landscape like Matt Benning. I'm just going to take Matt Benning for an example. Northeastern Huskies University, drafted by the Bruins, obviously saw McAvoy and all the freaking talent ahead of him, and just said, I don't see a fit for me here. So he went elsewhere to find that NHL time and that NHL consistency. It happens. It's a business.
Yeah, people got to do what's better for themselves as much as what's better for your team. We root for the team. They root for themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
But I wonder about, like, with you got Keefe somehow still coaching in Toronto, but I wonder who's the GM there now?
Retro Living now.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Trey.
What does he do? He says, "Oh, look how talented this roster is. I'll give Keefe one more year so I can see what he does, and I'm just going to cherry pick a guy from the Bruins organization, because that's what this team needs is some Bruins culture." So he brings over Gruden, and then he might be just thinking, okay, and next year I'll have all of those contracts. I don't know what they're going to look like, but he gets rid of Keefe and he brings up a Bruin, right? And that's all I'm going to say to any Leaf fan who talks about any success that happens under him. You guys had no success till you bought in on Bruins culture.
Jay, real quick, what's the ratio up in Nova Scotia? Is it high Bruins or is it Maple Leafs fans?
It's a lot. When I was a kid, it felt like mostly Bruins and Habs fans actually, but there's obviously a large. Doing numbers, I mean, Toronto and Montreal are still huge. You got to remember Crosby. Pittsburgh is a massive team, and especially like Dartmouth, Cole Harbour, where I grew up. And you've got Marchand, Glenn Murray. Like, there's a lot of good Nova Scotian guys that have kept the Bruins love. But you have a lot of, like, it's weird. There's a lot of Vegas fans out here now, but Pittsburgh, Colorado, Nathan McKinnon again, right? Like,
yeah.
These guys have created big fan bases here, so the Bruins,
that's awesome.
We're still a part of it, but it feels like chunked almost into fifths now, where it used to be kind of like, oh, there's two dominant, and now we've got these other ones, because guys start winning cups, and if they're from your city and you grew up on their street, you end up cheering for them. So,
no, that's awesome. I love the way that the game grows like that, especially.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, that's awesome. And it also happens with the coaches too. It's not just the players. The coaches can help permeate the game. We need to see more of that though down here in the States. That's the thing. Like hockey in Canada, that's a no-brainer. But in the States, like that's where we need to see it permeate like that. But no, just on Montgomery though, it also made me stop and think, who did he hire? Who did he bring in with him last year when he got the job? I don't think he brought any of his guys, quote unquote, his guys with him from anywhere. I think he was the one that was the odd man out who was plucked and were like, yep, you're going to join this staff. And so I wonder how much of this is him sitting there going, I want to have one of my guys in this spot now that it's open.
Yep. No, I think he's going to have a lot of input on this. I think that's going to be a very important negotiation tactic, is to get somebody that he's got, some kind of system relationship with, somebody that he can filter down. Obviously it's going to be a defensive coach, I would think, and that defensive system goes from Montgomery down to assistant coach X down to the players on the back end. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting, because now I'm going to start looking into his past and who he worked with, and in the previous years, either be at the NCAA level in Colorado or at the NHL level with Dallas and St. Louis.
It's going to be interesting, though, because to your point, you're talking about the youth, and I know you have this on the agenda too. Sweeney mentioned that more youth will be involved. If Montgomery's more of a defensive guy, does it make more sense to bring in a guy for the offense, someone that can run with those bottom six guys where you have so much mix up and change? Like, if Montgomery can do the defense, why not bring someone in who can do the offense?
Isn't that switched around, though? Isn't Montgomery, wasn't he a forward as a pro?
Well, I know he wanted to have them do more with the defensive zone breakouts and moving the puck from the back end. That's what I'm saying. Is would you go with someone who knows more of what Montgomery is heavy not in, if you will?
No, I get it. No, I just want to see a positive fit, to be honest with you. I'm in shambles right now thinking about who this addition could be, because we just don't know. It's a bit of a mystery for me.
For me, I want it to be. To me, it's just Monty picks the guy, like this, because he has to put his stamp. He came in, he said, "Look, the defensive system you guys have is incredible. I don't want to mess with that. I want to take that. I want to, blend it with my system, and so the defense will get more active. But yet you'll have the same kind of solid defensive zone coverage." And he did that, but obviously, something went wrong. So now he's the coach. He's the one that has to start molding that staff and that system. That's not Sweeney's job, right? Like, or at least not, in my opinion, that you're not anything your GM should be deciding. That's Monty. You're the man that's here. Do it your way. Have that confidence and be that coach. So, I'm just going to have to, lean into Monty in that way and say, okay, this is the guy that he wanted. So let's see what happens now. I don't want Monty. Here's Monty, and then, here's all of Bruce Cassidy's assistants, right? No, he came in to change it, so let him change it.
Yeah.
Nope, go ahead, Mark.
I'm also for, I was a big proponent of the Gruden signing last offseason because of what he could have brought, and that's more offense to the defense. Generating more shots from the back end, like we talked about a little bit earlier. So I kind of think that they're probably going to want to go with that same system moving forward into next year. To be even more potent team, less a goal scorer like Taylor Hall, less a lot of the intangibles that this team did have last season that were seen for a record-breaking regular season, but obviously non-existent in the postseason. But hopefully that changed. Maybe the philosophy changes just a little bit, where Jim Montgomery needs to be more of a head coach and not a player's coach, and kind of be stern in more moments that we saw last year. Like in the playoffs, when I saw him freaking smash a fucking water bottle in the back of I want to see more of that, even during the regular season in the good times, just to show that the players, we don't take back steps. We're not backtracking here. We're constantly moving forward, and that's when, in my opinion, the coach really needs to be on everybody's toes, regardless of accolades.
And I think we're going to see a lot more growth in Jim Montgomery in his second year. And I think, in my gut, one of the reasons why we're going to see that is because, and Mark, you mentioned this too, our friend of the show, Dom Tiano, has sent out a tweet that has basically verified that Bergeron is working out heavily in Boston. So obviously that is going to set Twitter ablaze. I've felt like Bergeron would come back from the end of last season just because that's not a way that he would want to leave. Like, he would leave on a loss, but not that kind of loss. Not when they had 1,700 chances to win. He would walk away on a loss where it's like, okay, we did everything we could. I'd rather see him leave and us not make the playoffs simply because everything was transitioning and he's just like, all right, I'm too old. I'm done. I want to spend time with my family and all that stuff. But with Dom Stiano tweet out there, do you guys think Bergeron comes back?
I do.
I've thought all along he'd be back. I've had very little doubt, personally.
Yeah.
How does his return change the way this roster feels for you guys, if that makes sense?
This is the problem with having assumed he'd be back the whole time. It doesn't change it for me because I've always, I've got him penciled in for 1C. And it's just like, if he doesn't come back, that's when my whole roster is going to explode and I'm going to have to put the pieces back together, just like, well, they are as well. But that, for me, it's, yeah, okay, he's working out of Boston. Of course he is. He's coming back next year. I'm just, he hasn't signed. He will. No big deal.
For me, it's if both of them come back. If both Bergeron and Krejci come back, I think that's when you're going to see, I don't know, kind of a weird roster.
See, Krejci coming back blows up my roster.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying, because you don't know exactly what direction, or at least I do. You don't know what direction they're actually going in. Are they going in for the old boys club? Are they going into tweak a little bit of the system to try to get better in certain areas where they were exposed heavily against the Florida Panthers in the first round this year? So I really don't know, but I want to say Bergeron is definitely coming back, because the fact is that these aren't normal workouts that Dom's talking about, off-season workouts for an older man that's about to retire. These are workouts that are seemingly getting him ready to make that decision and commitment to come back for the 100th centennial season. And I like what I'm hearing. And if he's doing that and the back is good with the herniated disc and so on, and he got, I believe it didn't require surgery, but it might take...
I didn't hear surgery for him.
Yeah, it might take time to heal completely, which... they got out in May, so he's had all this time to work himself back into the lineup. I could definitely see it happening. But I don't know. I mean, I'm still intrigued about what the roster is going to look like. And I think that we should do an exercise, Chris, in the next week or two when the news gets down to barely anything, that we could pretty much do a whole 2-hour program on a 100th centennial draft.
I think that's a solid idea. Yeah, that'll come to fruition.
We can get Jay involved. We can get 7 other people involved and have a 10-person draft right here on the BNG Hockey Podcast Network. And I think we have a lot of fun. Some drinks.
9 hosts, and we auction off the 10th spot to a fan.
Yeah, well, no. I mean, we got time to figure shit out and get the right people in there that are gonna do it accordingly and timely, but have fun, but still get content out.
Oh yeah, that'll be a good way to do it.
That's a good idea. Can I ask you? We went from Monty to Bergeron, and I have a question that connects the two of them.
Sure.
Is it possible? How do I put this? Is Bergeron being on the team actually a hindrance to Monty being able to coach his way? Does he give Bergeron too much, which I know is impossible to do, but does he give Bergeron too much respect? Bergeron leads a little more where, Monty, you are the coach. Bergeron is our own personal Jesus, but you're allowed to be firm. Do you know what I mean?
I know exactly
I
what
do.
you mean, and I love the question. And I think last year that's part of what got Monty in trouble is he let some of the players make the decisions more than he should have. Obviously, it all worked out during the regular season. But the playoffs, as Mark said, are a very different animal. And that's when you need your coach to come in and say, Linus, we've leaned on you this much. We want to have you available for next round. We've got to go Sway here. Not that you can't do it. This isn't that's the whole point of the coach's job is to manage the egos and sit there and say, not that you can't do it. You're hurt. He's fresh. Let's go with him. Let's put the series away and make it. Obviously, like you said, they're best friends. So it's not like he's going to hate on him for doing well. But you draw that line of this is when it matters. I need to decide and I need to draw a line. And that line is you're hurt. He's not. He plays. I think that's something that Monty will show from year 1 to year 2. I think it'll be easier to be seen if Bergeron is still there because it's a lot less like, oh, well, how would it have been handled with Bergeron here? Because that's the other thing is the first year that we don't have Bergeron, that's going to be the first year where everyone goes, well, Bergeron was here, this would have happened. If Bergeron was here, this would have happened. This wouldn't have happened if Bergeron was here.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Year
Definitely,
one of
right.
AB is going to be difficult. Yeah.
Well,
After Bergeron's going to, I'm not ready for it. So.
And how much does the team as an organization really lean on Bergeron? If Bergeron was sitting there saying, don't sign this guy in December, and they still went out and they signed him.
Right.
The guy we don't talk about anymore. Which, yeah. How much, does Bergeron's opinion matter if they still went against it? That's my question. At least at an organizational level. As a coaching staff, I don't know, but
at the same time, again, that mistake aside, you want I like the idea of them talking to Bergeron, but I'd hate for Bergeron to be the de facto GM / coach, I guess, right? So them making that decision, Bergeron knew the right thing to do because of course he did. He's Bergeron.
He Googled it.
But they right. He just basically picked up his phone for 30 seconds. But you wouldn't want them following everything he does either. So the decision, as stupid as it was, as brick wall as it was, at least it shows that they don't always listen to Bergeron, although this was a time where he was right, so it's not the greatest example, but
my concern on that though is the fact that he came to them as a voice of the room. He came to them as, this isn't my opinion as captain, this is our locker room. But if you notice how he kind of danced around it, was like, listen, it's not our decision. We can only make the best of it. So if it comes to this, we will give him his chance, but he's got to earn it. And he was firm about, this is how the room feels about it. Whereas, they knew where the line was. It's not our decision. Yeah. Our decision is how do we handle what goes on.
Yeah, I think that's one part of that issue that wasn't discussed enough is how incredibly well our locker room handled it. To me, they were not, they really walked that line of, well, we can't do anything about it. And this little fuck gets his chance, then he's going to do it our way or he's not going to be doing it. You felt it in it, and I really, that was, the whole thing aside, that was the part that wasn't talked about enough, is I think that you saw that leadership in that room with that issue.
And you saw it permeate through him and all the veterans. Foligno dealt with it. Marchand dealt with it. They all dealt with it in that same, way, if you will. It was a mantra, if you will. This is how we're going to handle it. We may not like it, but we have to deal with it. And that little microcosm of events, I think, really does solidify. We keep hearing how good this locker room is and what a guy like Chara and Bergeron mean to the locker room, but that instance right there also, I don't want to say let's go through that without Bergeron, but let's go through some adversity without Bergeron. What happens? Who's the one in that locker room? Let's put it through that scenario. Remove Bergeron. Who's the one in that locker room who sits there and kind of gets the guys together and says, how are we going to deal with this? What are we going to say when we're asked questions? Because, they face media more than ownership, and then, so far up, what are we going to say? How are we going to handle it? How do we feel about it, too? Because they also have to have that discussion, So my question is who other than Bergeron on this roster right now can hold that group conversation? Who do you guys think?
Man, you got to look back on the defense. I want to say McAvoy. I don't know. Tough question. You're pretty much in line with asking who's the next captain.
Sort of. But my question, the reason why I'm asking it this way is on the current roster, we don't have Bergeron signed. Who would be the one to take that conversation by the horns and say we have to have this conversation? I have someone in mind, and I think it would surprise you guys.
For me, I guess it'd be in that scenario, it's Marchand for me. I think especially what we saw out of him this year was almost like he was campaigning to be the captain when Bergeron's gone. I think he can talk to the room that way. I think he talks to guys that way. I think he's honest, he's forward, but he's incredibly supportive. His leadership style comes from Bergeron. And Marchand was, he's from Hammonds Plains, about 30 minutes that way. And there were a lot of people there that weren't happy he won the cup. He was they called him a rat and a lot of things for a reason, right?
Oh,
but look, we, of course, have watched him blossom. And to me, that's him. I think if Bergeron doesn't come back and an event like that happens next year, regardless of who has the C, I think it's Marchand who's commanding the room there.
I'd have to say Brandon Carlo.
I would go with Milan Lucic. Right now, off of this current roster,
All right.
I think Lucic.
It's been here 10 minutes.
All right.
But my point is he's the one who can look at it from an outsider's perspective and say, if we don't deal with this, this will destroy our season.
Well, your optics are valid. I like the way you're going with it.
And he may not lead the conversation, but he's the one who will get everyone in the room and lock the door and say, no one's fucking leaving. You're leaving through me when we're done.
Oh, so he's running security. Marchand is talking, and Luch is standing by the door like, you sit your fucking ass down. Right? Okay.
Something like that. It would be a group effort, One of them is much bigger than the other, so.
All right.
That's funny.
Milan Lucic is now Brad Marchand's bodyguard.
Literally.
He's ballet, like Virgil in The $1 Million Man or something.
To me, that's a perspective. He's the one who can sit there and say, if we don't deal with this, right or wrong, if we don't deal with it, it breaks us apart. So we need to have a conversation. We need the awkwardness for an hour, and then we move on from it. And again, I don't disagree with Brad Marchand being able to do it. I don't disagree with a guy like, Carlo having the C, all those things. But for such an egregious event like that, it would be someone who's more veteran, someone who's more passionate about the Bruins' way of doing things, in my opinion, at least. But yes, I know he's only been here for 10 minutes, so,
I'll say one last thing. This is a good problem to have, by the way. All three of us had 3 different guys that we felt could step up in a moment like that. There are teams who don't have one guy who could step up in a moment like that.
Calgary.
So it's a good exactly. It's a good problem to have.
And I think some of it was Milan knew then in Calgary that wasn't his role. He knows he's coming here to be a locker room guy.
Yeah.
To monitor the locker room. And, it's almost like a hierarchy where, Bergeron's the captain, but people have to talk to Bergeron. And as much as he is, I'm sure Pavel Zacha has no issues talking to Bergeron one-on-one, but he's going to talk to the guys next to him in the locker room, his locker mates. And then it's going to feed up to Bergeron. If there's a consensus feeling about something, a guy like Lucic or Marchand or Coyle, they then sit down and they go, hey, Patrice, we need to have a team meeting about this because I'm hearing this, and this, and we got to sort it out. It's like the identifiers and that kind of thing. So it'll definitely be interesting. And Jay, to your point, that first year after Bergeron is going to be interesting to say the least.
Oh, yeah.
Tough transition.
It's going to be strange.
I wouldn't be surprised if they had 4 A's float around for a year or two after that.
Carlo,
That's just my
Pasta,
opinion.
McAvoy, like absolutely, like easily, yeah.
Solid choices.
That first year, let's say it's this year, Pasternak, McAvoy, Carlo, and Marchand.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But I know we're kind of getting towards the end here, Mark. I know you wanted to talk about the release of the American Hockey League schedule as well. Obviously, that affects the Bruins and their development with the Providence Bruins and that sort of thing. What were your thoughts on that coming up?
Yeah, the Providence Bruins released their 2023-24 regular season schedule. Exciting, news at this particular junction of the offseason, but I'm really excited about what's to come from Providence. If you look on EliteProspects.com on the Providence Bruins page, you can see some potentials that are definitely going to be there, and the team looks pretty decent thus far, especially in goal. Kyle Kaiser and Brandon Bussey, and what kind of year Brett Harrison's going to have, and Mason Lowry and Fabian Lysell and Georgi Merkulov if he's still down there. So the upcoming year really looks good when you look at the organization's depth. But the schedule got released, and they're going to play Bridgeport 12 times, 6 home, 6 on the road. Springfield Thunderbirds 6 home, 6 on the road. Hartford Wolfpack 5 home, 5 on the road. The Hershey Bears 3 home, 3 on the road. The Lehigh Valley Phantoms 3 home, 3 on the road. Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins 3 home, 3 on the road. Utica Comets 2 home, 2 on the road. The Syracuse Crunch 2 home, 2 on the road. The Charlotte Checkers 2 home, 2 on the road. And this is a new one. The Cleveland Monsters. They're going out west, baby. They're going to play 2 home and 2 on the road. The Rochester Americans 1 home, 1 on the road, and the Toronto Marlies 1 home and 1 on the road. So
no games against the Halifax Citadels? None?
Absolutely none. Sorry, sir.
Again.
Sorry, sir. The PGA to the great NS unavailable.
All right, that's fine.
But no, I mean, I'm looking forward to. I mean, I watch a ton of hockey, so when there's no Bruins on, I float around the American Hockey League to find a game, and obviously, Cleveland's a good team. They won a Calder Cup not too long ago, so and that's I believe it's still the minor pro affiliate of the. I think is it? I don't know who it is because I think Colorado Eagles are now the American Hockey League affiliate of the Avalanche.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I'd have to double check. I forget too, but I know they've been a good, solid team down in the A for a while. So it'll be interesting to see how some of those games go. I'm looking forward to watching them myself. You mentioned the names. Merkulov, Harrison. Like I was not impressed with Harrison at development camp, but that doesn't mean he can't fix it.
Right.
And I think some of these games at the AHL level might be a brush under the chin that a kid like that can need sometimes. He just doesn't, I would say he leads into the physicality with his stick first, and it shows. And it's okay as, the last couple of years for everybody have been in a fucking blender and a half. COVID did that to everybody. So I can't sit here and fault a 20-year-old kid for, for being unsure about something in anything in life right now.
Right.
So
I will say that Brett Harrison is going to have his chance to have that type of game coached out of him. That would be something. Yeah, that's something that Ryan Mujanel and Trent Whitfield will all be able to get through to him. Becoming a first-time pro, and also Adam McQuaid is always down there too to lend hand to the younger people that are developing in the Bruins organization. For that physicality factor as well, how to position yourself appropriately to get hit and so on. I think there's a lot of good mentorships that's going to happen from this this upcoming season. And not every American Hockey League team is going to win the Calder Cup every year. It's very hard to do at the American Hockey League level because of the constant influx of the roster. When somebody gets injured at the higher NHL level, everything moves from the East Coast Hockey League up to the AHL and so on. There's a constant movement when things happen at the higher level, so it's so hard to take good players that are next up and coming NHLers that are up on the rise because they're there at the NHL level for an emergency purpose. You have to facilitate everything below.
Yeah, it's nice to have a guy like Lauko who can just hop on 95 and go up and down.
Exactly.
So I think he'll have a good shot to make the roster out of camp. Oscar Steen, I'm looking forward to training camp more than any other season. There's just so much that to look towards, and I want to be clear about Brett Harrison. All I'm saying is he's not in my top 5. As far as being ready, available.
And that's not bad for a first year AHL pro. It's not bad.
No, and that's why I'm looking forward to seeing him and what he can do, what can get coached out of him. I mean, that's one of those things where it might take a month, it might take an entire year. But if it clicks, I mean, the kid has the hands, he can skate. It's literally the only thing I can look at his game and go, I don't like that. And
as long as you're seeing a constant improvement in his game as a first-year pro, that you have something in him. I'm constantly preaching nowadays that when you're developing players, please have patience. Even as fans, please have patience. This is not a league that rushes its number 1 stars to the NHL fast anymore. There's intangibles that all these young players have to get because it's a very, very big transition for them as well. I'll use Fabian Lysell as an example. He just might a little bit anxious about everything that's going on and how he's transitioning over to North America, away from his family. This is not easy stuff for a young player to act like a sponge and take in all the time. So that's why I kind of think that this Jesper Boqvist is a really, really sneakily great idea for a player like Lysell. The guy's from Sweden. He's 3 years older than Fabian. If Boqvist doesn't work and he passes through the waiver process, this could be like a Vinny Lettieri for a player like Lysell, but a countryman. Somebody that he can, rub shoulders with and ideas and talk to and be comfortable with, you know what I mean? As Lysell continues to develop, he might need somebody like a Boqvist to kind of lean on. It's just my opinion and speculation, by the way.
No, it's a solid idea and a solid thought too. I mean, if you look at what they're doing, they've gone out, they've got a couple checks, they've gone out, they've got a couple, various European players to, kind of lean on and stuff. But, in the
all the mafias keep growing.
Yeah, right. It's going to be interesting, and I know a lot of people, as soon as Zadina hit the waiver wire, everyone's like, go get him, he's checked.
I know.
Check, go get him. I think Boqvist is a sneaky better get. I do. There's less pressure on him for one, because he's not a number 6 overall pick trying to figure it all out again. But it's the domino effect. You brought in a guy like Pavel Zacha last year. Boqvist is the guy this year. They played with each other in New Jersey, so he can take him under his wing a little bit and be like, no, you're going to be put in positions to succeed here. Keep the positive, because that's the biggest thing is this locker room is always positive. There's there's very little negativity. Even in the most negative times, as we talked about, they were still finding the positive way to handle things. Mm-hmm. And that's probably the most underrated thing about this locker room. It permeates out. There's the problems aren't problems unless Twitter fans want them to be.
And they want them to be. Let's say that.
And people are always going to want to find the problems and stuff like that. But, it's, as we talked about, lots of youth and lots of opportunity. That's what should be the most exciting, because a guy like Harrison could, if he gets over it, if he gets into the physical part of the game, in 2 years from now, he could be pushing for an NHL roster spot. That's how open this roster is. You know, a guy like Mason Lohrei, he could push this year. You know, and to your point, Mark, players are realizing they have other paths to get to the NHL. Just because they go and play in college doesn't mean their NHL chance is gone. And you're seeing a lot of that. And the NCAA is going to be awesome to watch this year. Like, just as a hockey fan, I cannot wait. But we still got over 80 days, and that sucks.
Yeah. Speaking of NCAA and Providence and so on, I am going to be starting up my Providence Hockey Report podcast. It's going to be more regular this season. Last season was kind of a shit show because I just got so busy, but I am definitely making time to talk Providence for at least 30 minutes every week. And I think the first episode, the second episode, we're going to have Brandon Bussey on, and I'm really excited about that interview to talk to him about how the NCAA is producing so many great goaltenders when they're drafted, particularly because of the time that they spend in the NCAA, gives them 4 years of development and still under team control. And that's really good when you can release a goaltender at 22, 23 years old, already ready to play pro hockey. So I'm really excited to talk to Brandon about that. I have his contact information, so we're going to get something done in the next week or two, and I'm stoked about this new project. And I'm going to be getting more players on and more coach interviews with Mujanel if he actually is in Providence next year. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities for some really good content from me. And our sports media company, which we continue to look for more writers, podcasters, and so on. So if you want to reach out and join our crew and produce content at a level that's accepted, credentialed by the NHL, AHL, and ECHL, please let me know. Black and Gold Productions, LLC at gmail.com. Send me a cover letter. Send me what you want to cover. Send me what kind of time you have to commit to joining our team, and we might have a fit for you.
And I know we have a ton of shows. I know I won't be able to mention all of them.
You know what? We'll start updating our shows every week. We'll write down a list and so on, and make sure you go over and follow them and go on Apple Podcasts and subscribe to their programs. Much like the Baked Bear Pod with Jay Below, one of my favorite programs for a good laugh. And I love the Strand update. That's one of my favorites. I like the seeky, the smooth tasting and all that stuff.
Yes.
God, I love that stuff.
Yeah,
But I realized my byline was like Bears, Blunts, Boston Bruins hockey, and I was like, I don't actually mention enough about the Blunts, so I was like, yeah, let's bring that back in. Yeah.
The best part though is they're all different too. Like,
Yes. Yeah. Oh, there's something for everyone.
You mentioned the Baked Bear. We'll promote all of them, but like Broad Street's a Boston hockey podcast. That's a newer one. You mentioned the Providence Hockey Report. We got Only Bruins, Something's Brewing, What's Brewing, Puck Off. With two of those I work with a couple great guys with. Mike Sullivan I do What's Brewing with. Puck Off I do with Andrew Johnson, who you can also find on the Short Shift podcast, which is crushing their numbers over there. Ian Thomas, shout out, they do a great job over there. Boosie and Brett do a great job over at Only Bruins. Something's Brewing with Mike and Nick. That show is really starting to develop. I love it. It's been great to see. Drop the Mitts. They just had Billy Jaffe on.
Yeah. Really good episode.
It was a great episode, great interview. Shout out to Chris Davis, Mike Sullivan over there. Obviously, You've got us here anchoring everything here at the Black and Gold Hockey Podcast. Obviously, Jay filling in very admirably for Grace last minute. Hopefully she's okay and she returns next week. But we'll always have something. And the best part is none of us are shutting down.
Yeah. Hey, before I get to the Patreon mention and the jersey we're giving away at the end of July, Jay, I want to thank you so much for covering for Grace on really short notice. You've been a tremendous guest the second time, so now you're officially a friend of the Black and Gold Hockey Podcast. And let's get back together more often. This off season and kind of do some collabs if you want. Just to get the content out. We'd really love that. It's what I do. I just wanted to say thank you for the the last minute appearance.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. Let me jump right into the Patreon. We do have a Patreon campaign going on. If you want to be eligible to receive or win a hand signed Boston Bruins jersey this month, 2 weeks. Sean Thornton, Stanley Cup champion 2011, fully authenticated. This is a beauty from Bruce Sullivan from Boston Sports and Music Memorabilia. I'm getting more jerseys after this one, so we're going to be going right through the offseason and all into next year. I'm probably going to get like 9 jerseys for the next 9 months. So just $1. If you want to spice up that fan cave, because I know you need it. I've been looking in your windows. It looks terrible. You need more black and gold. You need more stuff like this all over your walls. So please go to please go to patreon.com/Black and Gold Hockey Podcast. Donate $1 per episode, and we'll give you one of these fantastic things.
Jay, you got to put the towel back up now.
I got a second one over here.
Oh boy!
Did the second one fall?
Oh, that's the playoff one too.
Yeah, that's the
Was
one that fell
playoff
earlier.
one from 2011.
No, that's a 2019. My
What's
wife.
the new 2011?
But it was the year that the Bruins and the Leafs were on a collision course for the second round, and of course the Leafs found a way to lose. But that was so. I was gonna go to Boston. My wife planned to buy me and her brother, who was a Leafs fan, tickets to go to the
Give him
Bruins
my
and the
apologies
Leafs, and of course,
and my condolences.
yes, of course. and it was like, well, Toronto didn't get through, and she was like, well, hell with it, we'll go. And we went to the Game 5 against Columbus, and it was nuts. Like that whole, just to be around playoff hockey and the crowd, and it was a game where they had a lead, lost it, and then, won late, and the game was nuts, the crowd was nuts. It was nice it was my first playoff NHL hockey game too, and yeah, so I've
That's
still
a
got
good way to do
those 2 towels, yeah.
That's a
Awesome.
good way to do it. So,
Yeah, man.
but yeah, no, for just $1, I mean, I'd pay more than $1 for it, but Mark won't give it to me. So,
It's for the people,
apparently I'm
my
not
friend. It's
eligible.
for the people.
I was gonna say,
Well-
but I'm not eligible.
Obviously, if you sign up and donate $1, you'll be eligible.
But
Cheap bastard.
we've been going at this for almost 2 hours. So, did you guys have any final thoughts on the week that was? What you're looking forward to? Like I said, I have the countdown already going on my phone. We're at 87 days until puck drop on regular season, but before that, we got training camp. I'm pumped.
For me, it's looking forward to hearing more about Patrice Bergeron, trying to settle that whole thing. And I know that there's no rush. I know Kevin Paul DuPont wrote an article about how important it is for him to decide now. I don't believe that. But it is a business. We need to figure out what we're doing moving forward. If we have to make more additions or subtractions, whatever. But I'm just really intrigued about what the next week is going to look like. And obviously, we'll come up with some interesting topics to talk about. Maybe even have a guest on if Grace returns next week. I don't know. We might even have Dom Tiano on. I'm not sure, and then I want to start getting into looking at other guests like Tim from the Dropping the Gloves Hockey Podcast. He's a diehard Bruins fan from New England, so he'd be a great person to have on. Bobby Robbins is interested in coming on the program and promoting his book. Longtime Providence Bruins player, familiar with Bruce Cassidy. So we have a ton of ideas that are going on, and obviously there'll be an interview with Brandon Bussey that I got going on with the Providence Hockey Report. So that's what I got.
Yeah.
Lots of content. Jay, you got anything special coming up on the Baked Bear? Just
Working on some things. It's a weird. I got a few strains that I'm been trying out, Mark. So I'll have some of that anyway. And
Nice.
it's just like a lot of what I do is it's looking at the fan reactions to things and trying to talk people down off of ledges. And like one thing that you said earlier, Chris, was how much you're looking forward to training camp. And I'm the same way. Like last year was great, and then it sucked. But there's a lot to be excited about, or at least to be interested in, right? Like, who are the young guys who make the push? Who are the young guys who start getting serious minutes? Like, it does Bergeron. There's a lot of pieces that if you want to be negative about it and just say, oh my God, what a fucking mess, go do that. But to me as a
Right.
fan, it has the potential for a lot of interesting stuff. Now, does it end up being interesting and super positive? I don't know, but I don't know what else we can ask for than it being interesting.
But and you know what? To your point, maybe it becomes a dumpster fire.
It
If
could.
it does, that'll be interesting. That'll give us a hell of a lot more to talk about.
Exactly right.
What went wrong? We love doing those.
Oh yeah. I'm a Washington Commanders fan, and I don't know how much NFL you guys watch, but our owner for the last 25 years has turned the team into a dumpster fire for 25 years. And all the podcasters I listen to for those, like, that's what they talk about. They're like, because people think, oh, you love talking about how bad everything is, and they're like, oh my God, we would give anything to cheer for a normal, or to report and talk about football instead of nonsense. And, but it fills their minutes, man.
Crap like that. Who wants to talk about that? I want to talk about what, I love the fact that we can sit here and we have to have a conversation about, whether or not is Mason Allred ready for the pros? Is he ready to make the jump? What do we need to see from him? And those are much better conversations to have than, did you hear the owner's emails got leaked?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or the owner is the one who leaked the emails.
Right. Or is he the one who leaked them? We all send emails. Emails are boring. There's a reason why we get on here and do this with video and audio and go through the editing process. And Mark, I'm sorry, this is going to be long for you to edit.
No, it's all right. Hey, before we sign off and hear from our title sponsor one last time, I do want to put up a poll that I did a couple of days ago. And regardless of the Bergeron and Krejci decision on returning for another year of NHL Bruins hockey, how far do you think it's... Oh, my God. I can't see this.
How far do you think this thing can go?
No, let me do it. 3, 2, 1. Regardless of the Bruins and Krejci decisions on returning for another year of NHL Bruins hockey, how far do you think this team can go on a very early 2023-24 season prediction? I said I was gauging the Boston fan base for topics for this weekend's Black and Gold Hockey Podcast recording, and 12% said out of the playoffs, 68% said wildcard team, 10% said conference final team, and 10% said Stanley Cup champions. And that came from 996 votes. So thank you very much for participating. Truly appreciate it. But it's interesting on how to gauge the fan base, though.
So, I think when I answered that, I answered wild card team. All right?
I did too.
But here's the thing: my answer's not on there. I think they are a second round exit. Because I think they are in the top 3 in this division. One thing that we keep forgetting is just how bad some of the teams in this division are, or how bad their cap situation is, that they aren't able. Like last year, we saw Toronto have to go out and basically sign an e-bug because they could not put an NHL, AHL caliber backup goaltender on their roster. Mm-hmm. So, first and foremost, let's appreciate the fuck out of Evan Gold while we have him. Yes. Because we may not have him forever, and he does not put us in those positions. So as much as you may hate some of his moves, he's thinking ahead, so that does not become us. All right? Mm-hmm. Let's emphasize that. But teams like Toronto, is Toronto better than you on paper right now? Probably, yeah. Does that mean that you won't be a top 3 team in the division? No, there's still 3 of them. Florida, they're going to be without Ekblad and Montour for quite a while. They're both recovering from major injuries, so they may be fighting for a wild card team. We were talking about how excited we are for training camp and stuff, but there's 31 other teams that are in a very similar situation to us. We just don't know them as in depth because we're Bruins fans. That's what it is. Right. We know our Brett Harrisons, we know our Ryan Masks, we know our Mason Allreds, but these 31 other teams have the same fucking questions. Mm-hmm. Some of them are still sitting there going, why the fuck are we paying this guy $10 million to be in net? But one playoff run might help that. So, it's fun. It's hockey. It's fun. If you can't have fun, what are we doing?
And I answered Stanley Cup champion on that. And it's not because I think that's what's going to happen. It's because I look at the talent we have just by the core guys. argue what you'll have. We got the 2 number 1 goalies. We still got Pasta, still got McAvoy, still got JD. Like, there's too much talent to not, like, you really think, like, this team gets into the playoffs as the 7 or 8 seed or 3rd in the Atlantic? There's no reason on paper that you look at that roster and say, of course they could. Hockey has wild variance.
Oh, yeah.
And, like, Florida, we look at Florida's run and how unexpected it was, and our demise and how unexpected it was. That is hockey. So to me, the can is the team's too. I mean, if I'm a Coyotes fan, I'm not answering Stanley Cup because they can't win the Stanley Cup. No matter what happens, it's literally impossible. But that Bruins team, I look at that leadership and I say, man, they can. Answering honestly, wild card team. And I think that's what most fans are, I mean, they're trying to be honest, and I actually really appreciate that.
Yeah, I think that's their ceiling, is a second round exit. Mm-hmm. But to your point, there's no reason why they couldn't push for a cup.
Well, because they have one other teams and their injuries too.
Huge thing that we know of, and that's depth. They have so much depth that they're pushing the cap. They're pushing, we've got people who, before making a Google search, will just scream, buy out Derek Forbort. It's like, well, you can't, but nice try. Love the enthusiasm. Use Google for 5 minutes, but I get it, but that's how passionate they are too. That they want to see what they think is the better team, and that's what I'm looking forward to this offseason. Yeah. It's probably going to be boring on the books because we're pretty much done with it, but off the books, there's so much to talk about going into the Centennial season. I'm looking forward to all those projects. Mark, I'll toss this over to you. I know you wanted to hear from FanDuel one more time. We can get that out there. It's FanDuel.com/Boston. Up to $1,000 in bonus bets. If your first bet doesn't win, they give you your money back in the form of the non-withdrawable bonus bets. So it's a solid program. If you don't bet with FanDuel, you should.
Yeah, FanDuel is one of my go-tos apps. It is my only app, actually, that I use. And I'm not saying that because of the show sponsor here. And I love horse racing. I'm not a baseball guy, but I like betting on baseball. And I'm obviously hockey. You can get involved now because the odds are really good on next year's Stanley Cup champions. So if you want to, put a $5 on the Boston Bruins that I think are a plus 800, that's a nice little return for you. Or if you want to put a hondo on the Boston Bruins next year, that's an even better return if they win. So it's all in fun, and it's all the sports. All sports are covered, and it's a safe and effective way to get your bet on a regular or daily basis.
And I know Andrew and I will have some bet talk during some of our content on Puck Off coming up, how we feel about each team and what their bets and their odds are. So definitely check us out there. And awesome. It's been fun this Sunday morning. And unless either of you guys got any final thoughts, I'll end it with go Bees.
Go Bees. Thanks again for tuning in and supporting this week's episode of the Black and Gold Hockey Podcast. Please give the show a 5-star rating and write a review on listening platforms such as Apple Podcasts and Spotify Podcasts. If you'd like to contact the show for advertising opportunities or to send us a question or topic idea we should be discussing, please send us an email to blackandgoldproductionsllc@gmail.com. Don't forget to share our program on your social media platforms with other hockey fans and follow our Twitter accounts at Black and Gold Pod, at BNG Productions, at Black and Gold 277, and at Kevin_O'Keefe89. Also, please don't forget to check out our official blackandgoldhockey.com website where we cover the Bruins organization from the NHL level down to the prospects worldwide. Peace out.